Hello to all our LinkedIn followers, and welcome to our talk today on ensuring at-home agent compliance with robotic process automation. I'm David Wasserman from NICE's portfolio marketing team, and today I'll be talking with Karen Inbar, marketing director in NICE's RPA line of business. So welcome, Karen.
Thanks, David. Good to be here.
Thanks for joining. So Karen, as you know, our session today is focused on compliance in the contact center and how RPA can help solve the challenges in that environment. But this concept of compliance can mean a lot of things to different people. As I think about it at kind of the highest level, it means conforming to some type of internal standard or doing things set by a government mandate. But to set the stage for our talk today, can you maybe kick us off and spend a few minutes talking about your view of compliance and how that applies specifically in contact centers and agents working at home?
Sure. So as you said, David, and you're absolutely right, compliance could be multiple things, right? It could mean complying with the company's internal policies and guidelines, or it could be something external to the company, like government regulations or industry standards. And compliance is really important for organizations. I think a lot of it comes from because of the consequences of being non-compliant, right? That has a strong influence on the desire to be compliant. So conforming to internal company policies could be anything from complying to an 8-hour workday schedule, or just to give you an example from one of our customers, an insurance company, they have an internal policy that whenever a new customer calls their company, signs up to be a member with that company, they need to ask that customer for their preferred billing method. That needs to happen on the first call so they know how to bill that customer moving forward. So if the contact center agent doesn't ask that question of the customer, what is your preferred billing method, then they're out of compliance. And if we talk about compliance with external regulations, one example that comes to mind is the PCI standard. PCI stands for Payment Card Industry. And basically, that standard is there to ensure that credit card transactions are done in a secure way. So in the contact center environment, that means that whenever a customer gives their credit card details, that part of the conversation, of the interaction, cannot be recorded. Screen recording or voice recording. You know how contact centers they record the conversations for quality purposes. So once the customer gives their credit card details, which is confidential information, that can't be recorded. So that's the PCI standard, and companies need to comply to that. Now, failure to comply, it could be pretty costly for an organization. And these costs could be, there's a range of costs. For example, it could just mean upsetting a customer if you're not complying with your internal regulations. Maybe that's what they're for, to have a good customer experience. It could mean doing rework. For example, for that insurance company, if they don't get the customer preferred payment method, then they need to call that customer at a later stage, and those calls may add up and have a cost for the organization. Non-compliance with the PCI standard, for example, means fines, and these fines could add up to $100,000 a month. So that's a lot of money to pay on a monthly basis for an organization. So compliance is really, really key. But the problem is that most organizations rely on their contact center agents to keep in compliance, to be compliant, to be adherent with their internal policies and those external regulations. But if you think about the contact center agent, they have so much going on when they talk to customers, and they don't always manage to remember exactly what they need to say or what they need to do in order to stay in compliance, and that's a problem.
I see. So, now that we're all aligned on your view on what compliance is and the role it plays in the contact center as well as the cost, maybe we can put things in the context of what contact centers and contact center agents have been facing in the last year. You know, with agents working at home, I'd imagine it makes the job of keeping compliant that much more difficult. I first think of things maybe related to technology and, you know, the physical distance between themselves as the agents and supervisors. And second, you know, really these, I'll call it, increasing difficult economic times and the vulnerability of the contact center and their agents as soft targets for fraudsters. Can you maybe next dig into these topics and provide us your thoughts into the challenges that contact center agents and contact centers have in this new environment of agents working at home?
Sure. So naturally, work from home adds another complexity layer, right? In keeping agents up to date with those changing policies. And frankly, in the past year, 2020 was a pretty hectic year. Those policies, organizational policies, changed quite a bit. And it's hard enough to stay on top of everything being in the contact center environment. Obviously, it's much harder to do that working from home when these contact center agents are basically alone. You know, they don't have their peers next to them. They can't raise their hand and call a supervisor to come over. So they need to deal with it on their own. And, you know, I can think of two things that make this pretty challenging. The first one, by design, these contact center agents, they have access to a lot of organizational systems because they need data in order to support a customer when the customer calls to get service. But a lot of that data that resides in those systems is confidential. And again, it's one thing to have access to that data when you're in the organizational environment. It's a whole different thing when you're accessing that data from home. So, and actually, you know, they only need very partial data. They only need very specific pieces of data to support a customer call. So to work around that challenge, instead of the agent logging into the system and having access to all the data in that system, we could have an attended bot, an attended RPA bot like NICE's Neva, access that, log into that system and just pull the relevant data and present it to that agent, whatever they need in the context of the conversation they're having right now. And that's a great way to prevent the risk of being non-compliant. That's one thing. The other thing, David, you talked about was fraud. And also, you know, the contact center agents, the contact center is said to be the weakest link in the compliance chain. And again, working from home, agents are pretty exposed to fraud. They're more exposed to fraud than they are when they're in the office environment. And they're not really skilled to identify fraud attempts, right? That's not their forte. They're skilled to service customers. So they need a lot of guardrails and they need technology solutions to help them, to identify that there's a risk, to ask the right questions, to know when to move that conversation over to a fraud expert, right? So these tools exist today. So I'll just name a few. For example, a product that NICE has called real-time authentication. That solution can identify a fraudster based on their voice print. So it knows to match the voice print to the person who that fraudster says he is, but it's not the right voice print. So that would alert the agent that this is a fraud attempt. Another solution is real-time speech analytics that can identify, specific words or phrases which are associated with fraud, and that can pop up something for the agent to tell them, listen, there's a risk of fraud here. And Neva, again, the NICE attended automation solution, she can also help by presenting the agent with the right questions that they need to ask the caller whenever that risk alert pops up from real-time authentication or from real-time speech analytics. So those are the risks that are involved in the work-from-home environment and how technology solutions can address them.
I see. Well, it certainly sounds that there's a tremendous amount of risk in the contact center and for their contact center agents working at home. As we think about moving forward, in, I'll call it a new reality, the most likely circumstance will be that people will work still at home, or maybe some hybrid approach where they're working at home sometimes, contact center agents working in the office. And RPA sounds like it may be the solution to solve a lot of these challenges. Can you maybe finish us up today and talk maybe a little bit deeper about the solution, but also put it in the context of a real business challenge that you've seen solved by this solution?
Yeah, of course. So a lot of the solutions that exist today are after the fact solutions. So 77% of enterprises today rely on their quality programs to enforce compliance. So that means that after the fact, they rely on their training programs to teach agents how to stay in compliance and how to identify, out of compliance risk. But obviously, the most effective way to stay in compliance is by providing real-time tools that alert the agent in real time when they are not in compliance, or help them get on the compliant way really, really quickly as they're talking to a customer on the phone, as that customer engagement happens. And RPA, or robotic process automation, and specifically attended automation, is adopted at very, very high rates these days because of the unique situation of working from home. Because these robots, these attended bots, can really assist the agents and by popping up, reminders and alerts on their screens in context of what they're doing right now, or the customer that they're talking to on the phone. So let me give you a practical example. If we're talking about that internal policy of the insurance company I mentioned before, and they need to get the customer's preferred billing method, right? So the way that NEVA would work in this case is when a new customer calls, NEVA knows to identify if this is a new customer or not based on the CRM application. She's integrated with the CRM application. So once she identifies this is a new customer calling, then she would immediately prompt the agent to ask for the preferred billing method. So she would pop up a call out on that agent's screen, telling them, hey, this is what you need to do at this point. Here's a selection of payment methods. Pick the right one. In the other example I gave of PCI compliance, external standard, then where NEVA needs to, or where the agent needs to pause the recording whenever the customer is giving their credit card details, then the way that works behind the scenes is that NEVA would automatically pause that recording, so the agent doesn't have to do anything. He doesn't have to remember to do it, and he doesn't have to manually pause. And the way NEVA knows to pause the recording is once the agent starts typing the customer credit card details in a specific credit card field, that's NEVA's trigger. That's how she knows to go ahead and stop the recording behind the scenes. So everything is happening in real time as the agent is working through their systems or talking to the customer about specific issues. And NEVA could also pop up specific scripts for the agent. So they need to read, the fine letters at the end of a sale that they just made on the phone, for example. She could ask them to mark a checkbox on their screen in order to move to the next step in the process. So all of these reminders and scripts and checkboxes, that's all possible today with an attended solution like NEVA. It's pretty simple to create those business rules and define those simple automation and guidance flows. But the value that they bring is just huge, right? And it could save the enterprise their reputation, the customer loyalty, and also prevent those high fines that we talked about.
I see. Well, Karen, it's certainly clear that robotic process automation, and specifically attended automation, which is what you talked about with us today, can help ensure at-home agents stay compliant with both internal and external policies as part of an agile WEM approach. Thanks for joining us today. It was a great talk.
Thank you.
And to our audience, if you have interest in talking to someone here at NICE about RPA and attended automation and compliance, click on the Contact Us link above Karen and I on today's post. And just to let you know, We'll continue to have these sessions over the next few months, discussing various solutions and the way it can help at-home agents succeed with an agile WEM approach. Thanks again for joining us today. We'll see you soon. Have a great rest of the week. Bye-bye.